I'm here with Kacem.
Hi guys.
We are up in Hendon at the moment. We're going to be doing a Mill Hill test route, and Kacem is already famous.
From Clearview Driving, yeah.
He's did a mock test with Aman, Clearview Driving, which you can see probably here. I might just throw in a clip. How did that go, by the way?
It was alright, but I failed because I didn't realise there was a filter lane at a roundabout, so I just came to a stop and then the guy behind me started honking.
I know that roundabout.
I only had 3 hours of driving lessons at the time.
So you got how many serious faults?
3.
So you'd only done 3 hours of...
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. So how many hours of lessons have you done now?
I think 9.
So should we say mostly self-taught learner takes mock driving test?
Yeah.
Is that the title of the video? I don't know, it could be.
Sure.
It could be. Kacem's really good, isn't he? Because we've already had this conversation and yet we're having the conversation again now. He's just really good. And he's put a lot of energy into it as well. I like that. What we're going to do is we're going to go up to Mill Hill because he's doing Mill Hill test route. We're going to have a little... I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give you a warm-up drive because Aman didn't... I'm going to give you a warm-up drive because obviously the car is a little bit different. It's got a couple of features that are different. You said you're not used to the electronic handbrake. Oh, just like always, like, comment and subscribe because it really does boost the channel, pushes the video out to a wider audience, and it's just great. If you don't like it, then obviously you don't have to. But if you do,
leave a like.
Do it. Oh, dearie me. Have you looked at your timing questions?
Yeah, I tried revising them last night, but I fell asleep.
Should I give you an easy one?
I don't mind, give me whichever.
Tell me where you get the information for the recommended tyre pressures for your car.
Yes.
And how would you check them?
That's the one question I wasn't hoping for. You get them in the car's instruction manual.
Yeah.
And to check them, you get, I forgot what it's called, and you measure 1.6. You check for any, I forgot.
Tyre pressure.
Oh, with the...
Now, think about this logically just for a second, right? You are going to pass your test at some point very soon. I hope it's going to be on the date. Do you want to tell people when your date is?
1st of June.
Wow.
4 days.
That's brave. That's brave. Well, will you let us know your result?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Think about this logically. If you needed to check your tyre pressure, you were taking your car to university. What would you do?
Air pump.
You would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
We call it a pressure gauge. Normally a petrol station will give you that. How many tyres you got?
4.
Have you?
And 1 in the spare tyre, so 5.
Make sure you don't forget the spare.
Okay.
Yes? What happens when you heat air?
Expands.
It expands. Okay, so you'd want to check them when they are hot or cold?
Cold.
And what are those little caps that you stick on the...
So the air doesn't come out.
Do you really think a tiny piece of plastic is going to stop air from coming out? What do they prevent from getting in?
Like liquids. Water.
Could be
rain.
Liquid, it could be rain, could be dirt, could be dust. They're called dust caps. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
when you're doing these show me tell me questions, you just think about it logically, it just kind of makes it easy. Okay, so we're going to go for a warm-up drive. When we see you next, we're going to be starting the test.
A little warm-up later.
At all times, follow the road ahead unless I tell you to turn left or turn right or unless road signs indicate. Otherwise, if I need you to turn, I'll tell you in good time. We're going to take in one reversing manoeuvre, possibly an emergency stop, and we're going to be following sat-nav for about 20 minutes. If you're not sure where you're going at any time, just ask. I'd like you to drive on and then we're going to take the first road on the right.
Okay.
Okay?
Kacem has had a great warm-up drive and he now performs a good move off from the side of the road for the beginning of this test. We were initially facing the wrong way, so we've spun the car around and we're now back en route in the correct direction.
Okay, end of the road here, turn left.
It's the beginning of the test and it's always the most stressful.
No hill circus, here we come.
He thinks he seems to know where we're going, but he's not quite right on that one. His approach to this junction was textbook, checking both mirrors, signalling in good time, does effective observation, and enters the junction confidently.
And then you're going to follow the road ahead on the roundabout.
He then again deals with this roundabout like a pro. He approaches, good early observation, assesses it well, and then takes the gap as it's available. All taken very much in his own stride. Well done, Kacem.
Okay, the road is going to split into two. I'd like you to follow the road ahead, please.
Kacem again does well at this stop sign. He doesn't quite bring the car to a stop before he glances to the right, but he does bring the car to a complete stop. I do continuously recommend that you don't look to the right until you've brought the car to a complete stop, as it can be too tempting to keep the car rolling. But he does the right thing here. He then positions really well for this potential meeting situation, positively pointing his nose to the right. This communicates nicely to all vehicles around that his intention is to keep moving. Nicely done.
If you could put up on the left, safe place for me, please.
He kind of rushes this pull-up on the left, checking mirrors and signalling a little bit late, and then stops short. However, there's no impact on any other driver, so this is not a problem at all. This is not noteworthy. He's then convinced he's done something wrong.
Was that pulling up fine?
We'll talk about it at the end. We'll talk about it at the end.
Because I was going to go there and then I didn't see the box. I was like, oh wait, there might not be a box there, so I just stopped here.
This leads us on to a nice little teaching point. Sometimes looking for road markings can be very difficult as they're almost invisible. But what is always visible is the signposts that indicate parking bays. Always look for signposts if you're struggling to see the bays.
So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to follow the sat-nav now for a period of approximately 20 minutes. If you're unsure of where you're going, please ask, okay? You ready?
Yeah.
Take a breath.
Okay.
Relax. I hope your examiner's like this with you as well. They're not all horrible, trust me.
Yeah.
Okay? We're people. Not everybody's a people person. That includes examiners, right? But they don't want to fail you. It's a much nicer feeling in the car when they say you passed.
Yeah, okay.
Yes? Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Deep breath. Drive on when you're ready.
This test can be so difficult. It just gets into your head. You think you've made a mistake, and you haven't made one at all. Kacem signals before looking round the car. I don't recommend this, as something could go wrong. But he's now entering a 20 zone, and he doesn't notice. He initially keeps his speed around 23-24 miles an hour, but unfortunately, he picks up his speed to 27 here. This is a serious fault for use of speed.
After 300 yards, go right on the roundabout and take the second exit.
He's now approaching a busy mini roundabout upon which he's going to be turning right. And he makes his second big mistake.
Go right on the roundabout and take the second exit.
Oh, I really hope this is not too busy.
You could say that he almost gets away with it, but he mistimes it and blocks a van coming from the right-hand side. Mini roundabouts, when they're busy, are just not fun, but he misses a couple of opportunities to go. He could start edging forwards now, or if you miss that one, he could go now. It takes a good couple of seconds to enter the junction, and the vehicle on the left will only block this van for a short while. By the time he chooses to leave, that shield is gone. Practice making sure you have enough time to cross the gap.
It's like this all the way up, you know?
Have faith. Believe.
After 80 yards, cross the roundabout and take the second exit.
Kacem is initially confused about which lane he should be picking here, but he makes the right choice in the end.
I'm trying to think the first lane goes to the second exit, right? Yep, I think it does.
The only answer the examiner can give you is do what you feel is safe.
Oh, God.
I don't know what's happening because it's a Saturday and yet it feels like rush hour, but the Apex Corner roundabout, which is notorious in Hendon and Mill Hill, is incredibly busy. The good news is though Kacem is following the road ahead, which means he's in the left-hand lane, and if you judge this properly, you could use the vehicles on your right as shields, which block any oncoming traffic. This is exactly what Kacem does, and he gets across the gap nicely. He then responds well to the traffic lights that are in the junction.
You okay?
Yeah. Good. I'm just hoping that was fine.
Again, he's worrying about nothing. He did a good job. He forgets his exit signal, but he's in the left lane, so in this case, it's not noteworthy. Kacem then maintains good lane discipline, sticking to the left-hand lane, and then gradually builds up his speed, as the speed limit on this dual carriageway is 50 miles an hour.
After 800 yards, go right on the roundabout and take the 4th exit.
As the sat-nav has just said, Kacem is going to be turning right 4th exit on this roundabout, and he does well by moving to the middle lane nice and early. But for some reason, he doesn't take the right-hand position, which is the correct lane for this exit. This puts him in a spot of hot water.
It's too late now.
It's now too late for him to get across, and he makes the right decision by cancelling his signal. He then reapplies the signal, showing his intent to move across to the right-hand lane, and this in itself would interfere with other vehicles. He does this straight after the sat-nav reminds him he's turning right.
Go right on the roundabout and take the 4th exit.
He may or may not have already decided to follow the road ahead, but I guess it is possible to get bullied by a sat-nav. He ultimately doesn't have a major impact on any other vehicle as he turns right here, but this particular manoeuvre could and would be very risky in a different situation. For this reason, I'm putting this down as a serious fault. Examiners have to make decisions on the fly. This is definitely not orthodox, but this last minute swerve to the right to take this lane could be risky. It doesn't have an impact, but as I said, it's a serious fault.
It doesn't go.
I have said in numerous other videos that you can change lanes on roundabouts, but this particular last minute lane change, especially on a right turn, can be very risky. The first mistake he makes is by not picking the right-hand position to turn right. You generally can't go wrong if you do pick the right-hand lane. I've said this before on numerous videos. If you pick the wrong lane, go the wrong way. Kacem has picked up his speed well, as it's a 40-mile-an-hour road.
After 300 yards, turn right.
We're now entering the countrified bit of this driving test route, and overall Kacem balances positioning, speed and control well in this environment. Straight after this right turn, he's faced with a tricky width restriction.
Turn right.
But he reduces speed well and slows down to gear 1. For most of you, I'm sure width restrictions are just fine, but if you get your speed right, they're no problem at all. Get your speed wrong, you could lose a wing mirror. On these windy roads, it can get very tight in places, and it can be very easy to clip a curb. Kacem has no such problems. His speed in certain places is probably a little bit higher than I would have done it, but his judgment is bang on. But a little further up the road, he has a problem with a traffic light. But before we get to that, we've got the show me tell me question, use of horn.
When it's safe to do so, if you could just beep your horn for me, please.
No problems there. Now on to the traffic light. The lights have just turned green.
Turn right.
But some lights switch quickly. He just doesn't anticipate their change. And by the time he enters the junction, they're very much red. Traffic lights can just catch anybody out. I don't care how experienced you are, but if you don't think they're going to change, they will change on you. Even though he crosses the stop line before it turns red, an amber light means stop at the stop line, and he should have anticipated this could happen. Always think the lights will change. Ultimately, it just comes down to approach speed. If you get that wrong, you're likely to get caught out. Just anticipate just before the lights to make sure they don't change.
After 300 yards, turn left.
This next junction is just before a traffic light, and on occasion it can confuse a learner driver. Kacem has no issues here whatsoever.
Turn left.
And as he's done throughout pretty much the entirety of this test, his mirror and signal work is bang on. Another mistake that a lot of manual car drivers do when they're going downhill is to push their clutch in. But Kacem doesn't do that. He keeps his clutch up and rides his brake when necessary going down this steep hill. We're now approaching a very tricky meeting situation, which holds us up for a while.
Thank you for avoiding that branch. What is going on here? This is a mess.
That's the issue that we have here in the UK. These tight roads combined with parked cars
So that Beetle
creating gridlock.
is struggling to get through that gap.
Kacem has actually held back in a fantastic position, making sure that he's left enough space for these vehicles to come through. If he'd pushed up behind the Range Rover in front, that could have been more gridlock. But because he was so far back, he misses this gap.
I'm just not going to get a chance to go now.
Have faith.
Another profound comment, but basically what that means is stay calm. Your gap will come, and it does. These are the kind of situations you could find yourself in on your driving test, and the last thing you want to do is start panicking. If there's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to go.
It's like the whole world came and decided they want to drive past this road today.
Wait patiently and take the opportunity when it comes. Kacem now has his chance and starts moving forwards and squeezes through quite a few tight gaps.
That was a considerate driver.
The way he handles this is just like an experienced driver would. Again, very impressive, not fazed by lack of space. Good control, good awareness, good judgment.
Why it's so busy down here today?
He then positions very well for this sharp bend to the right, making sure he stays on his side of the road. He then, however, makes his second speeding mistake. He doesn't see the 20 signs and picks up his speed to around 23 miles an hour.
After 200 yards, turn right.
Which he does here. This is a driver fault for use of speed.
Turn right.
But he then does well in these next two junctions. A little further up the road, he demonstrates exactly how you should do a right turn on a bend. And then we've got the parallel park exercise.
After 300 yards, turn right, then You have reached your destination on your left.
I've seen quite a few learner drivers make a mess of this right turn. It's not majorly complicated, it's just important to assess the road ahead before you dive into the junction. Kacem does exactly that.
Turn right, then you have reached your destination on your left.
And again demonstrates a very good understanding of his environment.
And then if you could just pull up just before the red car. And in this instance, don't worry too much about driveways.
You have reached your destination on your left.
And now the parallel park.
So we're going to do the reverse parallel park using that car there. I like to pull up next to it and then reverse the car back in, finishing off within 2 car lengths. Okay?
Kacem doesn't wait for me to finish to explain exactly what he needs to do here, and actually ends up reversing the car back to avoid the driveway. He ultimately does very well here, and in this case I'm going to put this down as not noteworthy because he could have easily have stopped the car within the required distance. He's under pressure with the car waiting, but he makes sure he does all round effective observation. Periodically checking his right blind spot. Very well done. And then he's aware when there's a vehicle coming up behind.
There's a car behind me.
He's then forced to wait a bit as this traffic comes past, but he doesn't forget to check his blind spots again before he continues. He then, as I said at the beginning, reverses the car back so he's not blocking the driveway. He could just stop here, but he decides to continue to reverse. He's clearly shown enough ability to do this parallel park within the parameters required, and so for this reason I'm going to put this down as not noteworthy. But be careful, listen to your examiner, and follow the instructions.
You done?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. What we're going to do is we're going to do the emergency stop exercise. Alright, I'd like you to bring the car to an immediate and abrupt halt under full control. My signal will be stop. Don't stop until I tell you to do it, okay? Alright, and I'll be making sure it's nice and safe behind us.
Okay.
Okay? Alright? You okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine. I've just never done it. I'm excited.
You've never done the emergency stop?
Once with my driving instructor, but not in. I didn't do it in Aman's mock. So.
Okay. Alright, brilliant. So whenever you're ready, drive on.
Again, Kacem has absolutely no problem with this whatsoever, and he does all the effective observation that he should do before driving on.
Stop.
He then sticks it in neutral, secures the car,
Okay, I won't ask you to do that again. Drive on when you're ready.
and does all-round observation before driving on.
And if you could just pull up on the left just by this lamppost for me, please.
We're almost coming to the end of this test, and there's only a couple more junctions of note, so let's jump to the first one.
And then at the end of the road, turn right.
Kacem now has to deal with a very tricky emerge onto a busy junction. Now the rule is simple. You mustn't interfere with any vehicles when emerging onto a new road. However, this is where grey area gets involved. Kacem now has a vehicle on his right which seems to be holding back. The best thing to do now would have been to edge forwards and just block the right hand side, but Kacem leaves it a little late to move forwards.
I thought he stopped to let me.
Fortunately, he realises in time and brings the car to a stop. The bus then lets him out. Personally, I don't think he did too badly at all, and even though he almost slipped up, he did catch it in time, all by himself. So in this instance, I'm going to put this down as not noteworthy. And then the last thing of note is the last mini roundabout.
Okay, so at the roundabout, turn right for me, please.
Where he's just a little bit hesitant. It's not a major issue. He misses a couple of opportunities where he could have gone, but it's so minor that in this case, again, I'm going to put it down as not noteworthy. Sometimes when it comes to mini roundabouts, you should err on the side of caution, and missing the occasional gap is not going to be the end of the world. It's much better to do them as safely as possible, and that's what he does here. And we're back at Mill Hill Test Centre.
And then if you can just take this next road on the left.
And after he takes this junction, that's it. End of test.
How was that?
It was alright, but I don't think I passed.
Okay. So I don't need to ask you to pass or fail. Tell me why you think you failed.
Because the roundabout, not Apex Corner, the one after it at Morrison's, I took the completely wrong lane. I was supposed to go in the third lane. I went into the second lane, and then I just had to switch back inside of the roundabout.
I've got to be honest, I kind of feel that sat-nav told you a little bit late. It then told you at about, it said 800 yards. You very nicely moved to the middle lane, and then you had plenty of time to move into the right lane, but for whatever reason you didn't do it.
Because I wasn't sure whether to go into the third lane or stay in the second lane.
We're doing 40 to 45 miles an hour. Why did you not want to move into the right hand lane?
Because I wasn't sure. I was hoping, I thought the middle lane would lead to the fourth exit.
That's always a bit of a risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost playing smart with it, isn't it? Apex Corner, you can do that because there's multiple lanes that turn right, third exit. 3 of them, actually. But local knowledge is needed for that because the signage doesn't say that until you get right on top of it. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's not a pass. Okay, look, before I start, I want to say you can drive, man.
Thank you.
No, you drive well. You've got, there's really good stuff in what you're doing. I know that it's almost a slight oxymoron because I'm about to say there's a confidence in your driving even though you lack confidence in your ability. You drive like someone who's quite experienced. Now you mentioned the Sterling corner. Yes. You turned right from that lane there. Now you didn't interfere with anybody, and I do say in numerous other videos that you can change lanes on a roundabout, but what you've done, it's more the decision making of doing that, because if you're exiting left and you happen to be like one lane across and you change lanes to, that's a little bit different to then suddenly turning right like that. So yeah, that would have been a serious fault for turning right. Have you ever been on that roundabout before? Yeah?
But I've never gone to the fourth exit.
Okay, what have you done on that roundabout?
First, second exits. But
always worth doing a right fourth exit. That Mill Hill does go up there. It's possible. So next time you do it, if you're in the right hand lane, and it's also even being in the right hand lane, you can make a mistake because you might make a mistake by filtering across to the fully to the right. You need to do it. The mini roundabout just before the apex, you struggled a little bit on that. And in fact, on some of these mini roundabouts, they were really busy today.
Yeah.
But the mini roundabout just before the apex, you were kind of waiting for your gap, and then as you went, there was no real. The guy was coming straight at us. It wasn't to the point where it was dangerous, and I didn't even say sorry to the guy, but he was coming right. It was just the moment you went was the wrong moment. When we started the sat-nav, what was the speed limit next to that school?
I don't remember that well.
You were doing...
I'm guessing it was 20.
It was. You got up to 27.
Oh.
You didn't see that. Now there's another 20 zone, which you were doing 23, 24 in, which I gave you a driver fault for. But that's as we came down through all that horrible traffic, and then you come around the corner and then you're coming up. There's a 20 zone there, and there was a sign that came up and said slow. It was like an electronic sign.
I think so, I remember.
You may have seen that. That's just a driver fault, but 27 in a 20, so that would have been a serious fault. What do you think about that traffic light?
I should have stopped. I had enough time to stop.
Okay, the issue with that traffic light is this, right? You can, like, sometimes get away with amber lights and getting through, but what does an amber light mean?
Stop. Like, prepare to stop.
If a light's been green for a while, what should we be anticipating?
The amber light coming up.
So what would your speed have been doing if you
I
really
should've
were
slowed down.
anticipating? Okay, so if you'd have been slowing down, the light suddenly turns, how much easier would it have been to stop?
Much more easier.
But you didn't anticipate, so you could, and then it turned on you, and you were almost in that sort of like, almost at that point of no return, but not quite. And then as you went through it, if there had been a police car behind you, that's the sort of thing they'll pull you over for. Yes?
Okay.
Now, because it's so set back from the actual road, it makes it worse. So
Yeah.
the light, you go through the light, and then we're still going up over the hill, and then we're out into the junction.
Yeah.
I know that is not what you kind of wanted to hear, but what does that tell you about that you've got to, that you need to be paying attention to more? For example, with the speeding, what should you be paying attention to more?
Road signs.
How do you read road signs regularly?
I guess I missed that one, so...
I think you missed two, because it's two of them, but one was a big one. Give him some love in the comments. This guy's is a trooper. He's done two mock tests on 2 different channels. You've got all the tools in place to actually do really well.
Okay.
Just needs a little bit of fine tweaking. I really hope that you've got some value out of this video. And again, I hope you've got some value out of this video. If you have, hit the like button and subscribe if you like more content. And I will see you in the next one. Some love in the comments, please, because he's amazing.
Thank you.
He's amazing. See you in the next one. Get well out.